Have you ever wondered if you're really in control of your decisions? What if your subconscious mind, working silently in the background, is actually running the show? From the way we interpret body language to how we form memories and emotions, our subconscious plays a massive role in shaping our lives, often without us even realizing it. How your unconscious mind rules your behavior. You'll discover how your mind works beneath the surface, influencing your actions and decisions in ways you never imagined. Ready to uncover the hidden forces steering your life? Imagine this. You're in a grocery store, wandering down the aisles, when you spot two brands of cereal. One is familiar, the one you always get, but a new one catches your eye. It has vibrant colors and promises an extra crunch. You stand there for a moment, staring at both, before you instinctively grab your usual box and toss it into the cart. It feels like you made the decision in a split second without much thought. But did you really? The truth is, while it may seem like you consciously chose the cereal you buy every week, your decision-making process is far more complicated than it appears. Lurking beneath the surface, your subconscious mind was working hard, weighing the memories of that familiar cereal from your childhood, the comfort of routine, and perhaps even the soft nudge of past advertisements you've long forgotten. Before you could even consciously decide, the choice was already made for you. The mystery of the mind, uncovering the unconscious for centuries. Philosophers and scientists have been fascinated by the human mind. They've spent lifetimes trying to figure out why we think the way we do and how much of our behavior is truly under our control. But the more they looked, the more they realized that a large part of our mind operates in the shadows, beneath our conscious awareness. One of the first thinkers to explore this was the German philosopher Immanuel Kant in the 1700s. Kant made a revolutionary observation. Our minds don't just passively receive information from the world, they actively shape it. According to Kant, we don't experience the world as it is. Instead, our minds filter and interpret reality, constructing our personal version of it. The idea that our brain creates its own reality was groundbreaking, but it left an unanswered question. What part of the brain was responsible for this? Enter Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis. In the early 1900s, Freud took this idea further by developing his theory of the unconscious mind. Freud suggested that much of our behavior stems from hidden parts of the mind, thoughts, memories, and desires buried deep in our subconscious. These hidden elements, Freud believed, had a massive influence on our actions, sometimes leading us to behave in irrational or unhealthy ways. According to Freud, the subconscious was a chaotic place filled with unresolved conflicts and dark impulses. He famously described the mind as an iceberg. The small, visible tip represented the conscious mind, while the vast, hidden mass beneath the surface was the subconscious. Freud believed that if we could bring these buried thoughts to light, we'd be able to understand and even fix some of our deepest psychological problems. But while Freud's theories gained popularity, they were difficult to prove. The tools and technology available at the time weren't advanced enough to truly explore the workings of the brain. As a result, many of Freud's ideas remained speculative. For decades, scientists focused on studying human behavior in more observable ways, largely leaving the subconscious mind behind. The dominant view shifted. Humans were seen as complex machines, like computers, capable of processing vast amounts of data logically. Behaviorism, a branch of psychology that focused on observable behaviors rather than internal thoughts, took center stage. However, the tide turned in the 1980s, when new advancements in neuroscience rekindled interest in the subconscious mind. This was largely thanks to breakthroughs in brain imaging technology. With the invention of functional magnetic resonance imaging, neuroscientists could for the first time take detailed scans of the brain in action. The fMRI allowed scientists to track blood flow and neural activity with 3D precision. They could now observe how different parts of the brain lit up during various tasks and emotions. This was a game changer. Suddenly, the subconscious mind wasn't just a theory. It could be studied, measured, and mapped. One of the most fascinating discoveries that came from this new technology was that the brain is composed of 3 interdependent layers, each responsible for different aspects of our behavior. At the deepest, most primitive level lies the reptilian brain. This is the oldest part of the brain, responsible for basic survival functions like breathing, eating, and the instinct to fight or flee when faced with danger. This part of the brain operates entirely subconsciously, and its job is simple: keep you alive. Stacked on top of the reptilian brain is the limbic system, also known as the mammalian brain. This part of the brain handles emotions and social behavior. It's responsible for the instinctive ways we interact with others. Things like recognizing social hierarchies, feeling empathy, and forming bonds. It's also where our subconscious perceptions of social situations are processed. For example, when you walk into a room and immediately get a vibe from the people there, that's your limbic system at work. Finally, the most recent addition to the brain is the neocortex, a complex structure found in abundance in humans. The neocortex is where higher-level thinking happens. It's responsible for reasoning, planning, and conscious decision-making. This part of the brain is what makes humans capable of art, science, and abstract thought. However, as powerful as the neocortex is, it often takes a back seat to the older, more primal parts of the brain. When we make decisions, especially under pressure, our reptilian and limbic systems jump into action, often making choices before the neocortex has a chance to weigh in. This explains why we sometimes act irrationally or feel emotions that don't seem to make sense. These reactions come from the subconscious mind, and only later does the conscious mind try to make sense of them. With the help of modern technology, scientists now understand that the subconscious mind plays a far larger role in our lives than previously thought. While the conscious mind is responsible for logic and planning, the subconscious is the driving force behind most of our everyday behaviors. It gathers and processes an incredible amount of information, far more than our conscious mind could ever handle. Imagine walking down a busy street. Your conscious mind might focus on a conversation with a friend or the task of crossing the road. But your subconscious is constantly scanning your surroundings, picking up on subtle cues, the honk of a distant car, the smell of food from a nearby restaurant, the body language of people passing by. Without you realizing it, your subconscious processes all this data and uses it to influence your actions. And so, while it may feel like we're in control, the truth is that our subconscious mind is always at work, guiding us through life in ways we rarely notice. Understanding this hidden power is the first step to unlocking some of the greatest mysteries about ourselves. The 3 layers of your brain, reptile, mammal, and human. Picture yourself at a busy airport. You're rushing to catch your flight, weaving through crowds, mentally mapping out how to make it through security in time. But something catches your eye. A man, just ahead of you, suddenly makes a sharp movement. His arms fly up, and your heart skips a beat. Instinctively, you freeze. Your brain instantly flips into high alert. Is he about to attack? Is something wrong? Your reaction, that split second of fear and readiness to fight or flee, wasn't a conscious decision. It wasn't your logical brain thinking, "Oh, I should probably be cautious now." It was your oldest, most primal brain taking control. In that moment, the part of your brain often called the reptilian brain snapped into action. This ancient structure, sitting deep inside your head, has one job: keep you alive. The reptilian brain is like a watchdog, constantly scanning your environment for anything that could be dangerous, and it reacts fast, much faster than your conscious mind. You might think of yourself as a modern, civilized person with well-thought-out plans and rational decisions. But beneath that, your reptilian brain is always on duty, protecting you in ways you may never notice. This part of the brain is responsible for your most basic survival instincts, controlling your breathing, regulating your heart rate, and kicking in your fight-or-flight response when something seems off. But the reptilian brain isn't the whole story. Layered above, it is a more complex part of your mind, one that adds a whole new dimension to your behavior: the limbic system, or what some call the mammalian brain. The limbic system developed later in evolution, and it brought with it emotions, social behavior, and the ability to connect with others. This is the part of the brain that makes you human, or at least more than a simple survival machine. It's the limbic system that makes you care about relationships, feel empathy, and recognize social cues. When you walk into a room and sense the mood without anyone saying a word, it's your limbic system at work. It's also what helps you interpret a friend's smile as welcoming or a stranger's glare as threatening. Let's go back to that airport. Imagine that, after freezing for a second, you realize the man wasn't dangerous at all. He was simply waving to catch someone's attention. You relax, but now you notice something else. The crowd around you is buzzing with energy. People are excited. Maybe it's the beginning of the holiday season, and everyone's eager to get to their destinations. You start to feel that excitement, too. even though no one has spoken to you. That subtle sense of the atmosphere, of the emotional undercurrent around you, comes from your limbic system. Humans evolved as social creatures, and the limbic system is essential for navigating social interactions. Whether we're aware of it or not, we're constantly picking up on cues from other people, facial expressions, tone of voice, body language, and using them to guide our behavior. Have you ever felt uncomfortable in a conversation without knowing why? Or sensed tension between two people even when they weren't arguing? That's your limbic system reading the room, processing signals from others, and influencing how you feel and act. But the story of the brain doesn't end with the limbic system. Layered on top of both the reptilian and mammalian brains is the neocortex, the part that truly makes humans stand out. The neocortex is where higher-level thinking happens. It's responsible for planning, reasoning, and conscious decision-making. When you sit down to solve a complex problem, organize your thoughts, or plan your future, that's your neocortex in action. The neocortex allows you to engage in abstract thinking and imagine possibilities beyond your immediate circumstances. It's what enables you to reflect on your actions, weigh the pros and cons of different choices, and build long-term goals. It's also responsible for art, science, and language, the things that separate humans from other animals. But here's the twist. Even though the neocortex is powerful, it doesn't always run the show. In fact, most of the time, it's not even the first part of your brain to react. Let's go back to that airport scene one more time. You've realized the man is harmless, and you're starting to feel the energy of the crowd. Your neocortex might now step in, taking stock of the situation. I'm almost at the gate. Should I grab coffee before boarding? Is there time to check my email? You're starting to think about your plans again, consciously deciding what to do next. But notice what happened. Before your neocortex even got involved, both your reptilian and limbic systems had already made their moves. They sensed potential danger and emotional cues before your conscious mind could catch up. This is a pattern that happens all the time. Your subconscious brain, the reptilian and limbic parts, often makes decisions for you in an instant, and only later does your neocortex step in to explain why you did what you did. In fact, neuroscientists have found that many of our actions are guided by subconscious processes long before we become aware of them. In one famous study, participants were asked to press a button whenever they felt the urge. What the researchers discovered was mind-blowing. The participants' brains had already made the decision to press the button several seconds before they consciously decided to do it. The subconscious mind had acted first, and the conscious mind merely caught up. This idea, that the conscious mind often plays catch-up to the subconscious, challenges the way we think about free will and decision-making. It's tempting to believe that we're fully in control of our actions, carefully weighing every choice we make. But the truth is, much of what we do is influenced by deeper, older parts of the brain that work behind the scenes. Think about the last time you had a gut feeling about something, a sense that something was off or that you should act in a certain way. That wasn't your conscious mind rationally analyzing the situation. It was your reptilian and limbic systems responding to subtle cues that your neocortex hadn't even registered yet. Take, for example, a hiker navigating a dense forest. As they walk along the path, they feel an inexplicable urge to stop. Something just feels wrong. They can't quite put their finger on it, but the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. Maybe it's the eerie silence, or the way the trees seem to close in. Without fully understanding why, the hiker decides to turn back. Later, they might reflect on that decision and tell themselves they were being cautious. But the truth is, their subconscious mind had already made the call. It picked up on subtle environmental cues that signaled danger, perhaps the absence of birdsong or the stillness in the air, and triggered a primal response to avoid the unknown. So, while we like to think of ourselves as rational beings, carefully weighing our options before acting, the reality is that much of what we do is driven by parts of the brain we barely notice. The reptilian brain keeps us safe, the limbic system helps us navigate social situations, and the neocortex allows us to think through problems. Together, these three layers form the foundation of our behavior, shaping everything from our gut reactions to our long-term plans. What's fascinating is how these layers interact. Your reptilian brain might kick in when you hear a loud noise, triggering an instinctive fear response. But your limbic system quickly steps in, asking, is this something I should be afraid of? Or is it just a false alarm? If it's a false alarm, like realizing the man in the airport was just waving to a friend, your neocortex will then rationalize the situation and calm you down. This constant interplay between the layers of your brain shows how complex and sophisticated our subconscious minds really are. As we move forward in this exploration of the subconscious, keep this image of the layered brain in mind. It's not just a metaphor. It's a powerful way to understand how your behavior is shaped by different forces working together, often without you realizing it. In the next chapter, we'll dive deeper into how your subconscious mind gathers data from the world around you and makes decisions before your conscious mind has a chance to weigh in. But for now, remember this. Your brain is like a layered machine, each part with its own role, constantly working to guide you through life. Decision-making, your subconscious at work. Imagine you're at a party. The music is loud, people are chatting, and you're holding a drink, trying to decide whether to stay a bit longer or head home. You've had a long day, and part of you feels tired, but something keeps you standing there, glancing around the room. You're not sure why, but you feel like you shouldn't leave just yet. Then, out of the corner of your eye, you spot an old friend who you haven't seen in years. Suddenly, your hesitation makes sense. You were waiting, subconsciously anticipating that something interesting was about to happen. This moment, where you feel like you're not in full control of your decision, is a perfect example of how your subconscious mind often guides your choices. In the previous chapter, we explored how the different layers of your brain work together to shape your reactions and behavior. Now, we'll dig deeper into how decisions are made and reveal a surprising truth. Most decisions are made long before your conscious mind gets involved. Let's go back to that party for a moment. You might think that you're consciously weighing the pros and cons of staying or leaving. Maybe you've gone through the list in your head. I should stay because I might see someone I know, but I'm tired and have an early morning tomorrow. It feels like a rational process, but in reality, your subconscious mind has already done most of the work. By the time your conscious mind starts debating, your subconscious has gathered all the relevant data and quietly nudged you in a particular direction. How does this happen? To understand, we need to explore how the subconscious mind collects and processes information. Throughout your day, your brain is bombarded with stimuli, sights, sounds, smells, and more. But here's the thing. Your conscious mind can only focus on a tiny fraction of it. Imagine walking down a bustling street. Your conscious mind might be thinking about what to have for lunch, but your subconscious is scanning the environment, picking up on everything else. The movement of cars, the sound of footsteps behind you, the shifting expressions of people you pass by. Your brain is like a supercomputer, constantly processing this flood of information without you even realizing it. At that party, for example, your subconscious mind might have noticed subtle details that your conscious mind missed. Perhaps the familiar voice of your friend in the background or the way the energy of the room shifted when they arrived. These clues, gathered from your environment, are quietly influencing your behavior, steering you toward decisions that feel instinctive or just right without you needing to think too hard. Here's where it gets even more fascinating. Research shows that the subconscious mind often makes decisions seconds or even minutes before the conscious mind is aware of them. One of the most famous studies on this phenomenon was conducted by neuroscientist Benjamin Libet. In his experiment, participants were asked to perform a simple task: press a button whenever they felt the urge. Sounds easy enough, right? The participants were also instructed to note the exact moment they became aware of their decision to press the button. What Libet discovered was mind-blowing. The participants' brains had already initiated the decision to press the button several seconds before they consciously realized they wanted to do it. Their subconscious minds were making the decision first, and their conscious minds were catching up. Think about what this means. Many of the decisions you believe you're making rationally are already in motion before you even realize it. Your subconscious is gathering data, weighing options, and setting you on a course of action. By the time you consciously decide, it's often too late to reverse the process. You're simply confirming what's already been decided below the surface. This subconscious decision-making process is especially powerful in situations where time is of the essence. Imagine you're driving down the highway, and suddenly, the car in front of you slams on its brakes. Without thinking, you react, you swerve, or hit your brakes to avoid a collision. This isn't the result of a careful, conscious decision. Your subconscious mind has already taken control, reacting to the danger far faster than your conscious mind could. In moments of crisis, like the one on the highway, the brain can't afford to waste time weighing options or considering pros and cons. Instead, your subconscious relies on something called heuristics, mental shortcuts that allow you to make quick decisions based on past experiences and learned patterns. Heuristics are incredibly useful because they allow us to react swiftly without needing to analyze every single detail of a situation. Think about how many times a day you rely on heuristics without even knowing it. When you walk into a room and instantly sense whether it's a welcoming environment or tense, that's a heuristic in action. Your brain has learned to recognize patterns of body language, facial expressions, and tone of voice, allowing you to make quick judgments about the mood of a room. When you decide what to order at a restaurant based on past meals you've enjoyed, that's another heuristic. Your subconscious mind quickly scans your memories, filtering out irrelevant information and presenting you with a few options that seem most appealing. But while heuristics are helpful, they can also lead to biases, patterns of thinking that can distort our decision-making. These biases often happen because the subconscious mind processes information in a way that prioritizes speed and efficiency over accuracy. After all, if you had to carefully analyze every choice you make, you'd never get anything done. So, instead of evaluating every possible outcome, your brain makes snap judgments based on past experiences, emotional cues, and limited data. Let's say you're at a job interview, and the interviewer reminds you of someone you didn't get along with in the past. Even if the interviewer is friendly and qualified, your subconscious mind might trigger a negative bias, causing you to feel uneasy or skeptical. Your brain, trying to save time, has connected the interviewer's appearance or mannerisms to a past experience, influencing your feelings without you realizing it. This is just one example of how biases shaped by the subconscious can steer your decision-making. Another common bias is confirmation bias, the tendency to favor information that confirms what you already believe. Let's say you're researching a new phone to buy. You've already convinced yourself that one brand is better than the others. So when you come across reviews or articles, your subconscious mind seeks out the ones that support your opinion. Even if you encounter data suggesting another brand is superior, your subconscious may filter it out or downplay its importance. You might not even notice you're doing this, but your brain is working behind the scenes, reinforcing what you already believe. Confirmation bias is a powerful example of how the subconscious mind doesn't just gather and process information. It also shapes how we interpret the world. When we believe we're making objective decisions, the reality is often far more subjective. Our subconscious mind filters, distorts, and prioritizes information in ways that align with our existing beliefs and experiences. But while biases can lead to flawed decisions, they're also part of what makes the subconscious mind so effective. After all, the brain evolved to help us survive, not to be perfectly rational. If our ancestors had stopped to carefully consider every choice they made, they wouldn't have lasted long in a world full of predators and dangers. The ability to make fast, instinctive decisions, guided by subconscious cues and biases, was essential for survival. And while we live in a much safer world today, those same mental shortcuts still guide many of our decisions. So, how can you become more aware of the influence your subconscious mind has on your decisions? The first step is recognizing that your conscious mind isn't always in control. The next time you make a decision, especially one that feels like it comes from your gut, pause and reflect. What subtle cues might your subconscious have picked up on? What biases could be at play? By acknowledging the role of the subconscious, you can start to notice patterns in your thinking and make more informed choices. One powerful way to improve decision-making is to take a step back when you can. While the subconscious mind is excellent at making quick decisions, it can sometimes benefit from a little help. In situations where you have time to think things through, engage your conscious mind and actively challenge your initial instincts. Ask yourself, am I reacting based on past experiences or biases? What other perspectives should I consider? By bringing your subconscious patterns to light, you can gain greater control over your decisions and start making choices that are more aligned with your true goals and values. In the end, though, it's important to appreciate just how incredible your subconscious mind really is. It processes vast amounts of information, helps you navigate the complexities of daily life, and makes decisions quickly and efficiently. The more you understand how it works, the more you can harness its power, and the better you'll be at making decisions that truly reflect who you are. The blind spot, seeing without seeing. Imagine walking through a familiar hallway in your home, late at night. The lights are off, and shadows cast eerie shapes on the walls, but you're not concerned. You know the space well, and even though you can't see everything clearly, you have a sense of where everything is. Your body instinctively moves to avoid the furniture. Your feet navigate around obstacles with ease, and you confidently make your way to the kitchen without turning on the lights. How did you do that? Your conscious mind might say, I know this space by memory, but there's more to the story. Beneath your conscious awareness, your brain is working overtime, using past experiences, environmental cues, and subconscious processes to help you move through the world, even when you can't see everything. One of the most fascinating capabilities of the brain is its ability to fill in gaps. Much like that familiar hallway you navigate in the dark, your mind is constantly interpreting incomplete information and piecing it together to create a seamless picture of reality. This ability is particularly evident when it comes to vision, where the brain steps in to see things that our eyes might miss. To understand this process, we need to dive into a concept known as blind sight, the ability of individuals with visual impairments to still respond to visual stimuli they claim not to see. One of the most striking cases of blind sight involved a man named David, who had suffered a stroke that left him blind. Both of his visual cortices, the parts of the brain responsible for processing what we see, were damaged, rendering him unable to perceive the world as he once did. For all intents and purposes, David was blind, or so it seemed. Despite this, researchers discovered that David could still see things in ways he couldn't explain. In a series of experiments, scientists presented David with various images, such as shapes, faces, and movements. Although he couldn't consciously see the images, David was able to correctly identify what they were at a higher rate than random guessing would allow. When shown a picture of a face, for instance, he could often tell whether it was smiling or frowning, even though he had no conscious awareness of the image itself. This phenomenon baffled scientists. How could someone without conscious vision still respond to visual information? The answer lies in the brain's incredible ability to process information on a subconscious level. Although David's visual cortex was damaged, other pathways in his brain were still functioning, allowing his subconscious mind to process visual data that his conscious mind could not. Blind sight is a powerful example of how our subconscious mind can perceive the world in ways that go beyond our conscious experience. But the truth is, we all have a form of blind sight. Our brains are constantly filling in gaps in our vision and creating a seamless image of the world, even when the raw data is incomplete. Here's a simple exercise to demonstrate this. Close one of your eyes and hold up a small object, like a pencil, at arm's length. Slowly move the object to the outer edge of your field of vision. At some point, the object will disappear completely, even though your eye is still open. That's your blind spot, the point where the optic nerve connects to the eye, and there are no light receptors to detect visual information. But here's the interesting part. When you look at the world with both eyes open, you don't notice any blind spot. Why? Because your brain automatically fills in the missing information. It takes the data from your other eye, along with surrounding visual cues, and creates a complete image. You're not aware of this process. It happens entirely beneath the surface, but it's one of the many ways your subconscious mind ensures you perceive the world as seamless and continuous. This ability to fill in gaps doesn't just apply to vision. Our subconscious mind does the same thing with sound, touch, and even memory. In fact, memory is one area where the subconscious plays an especially active role in filling in blanks, often leading us to believe we remember things more accurately than we actually do. Have you ever reminisced with a group of friends about an event from years ago, only to find that everyone has slightly different versions of what happened? Perhaps you remember wearing a red shirt while your friend insists it was blue. Or maybe you recall the event taking place in one location, but someone else is certain it was somewhere else entirely. Who's right? The truth is, everyone might be a little wrong. Our memories aren't perfect recordings of the past. Instead, they are constructed and reconstructed over time. Each time we recall a memory, our brain fills in gaps using bits of information from other experiences, emotions, and stories we've told ourselves. Over time, these details can shift, making our memories feel accurate but unreliable. One famous case that illustrates the fallibility of memory involved a woman named Jennifer Thompson, who in 1984 was the victim of a horrific crime. During the attack, Jennifer made it her mission to memorize her assailant's face, determined to identify him later. After the crime, she confidently picked a man named Ronald Cotton out of a lineup. Based on her testimony, Cotton was convicted and spent more than a decade in prison. But years later, DNA evidence revealed the truth. Cotton was innocent. Jennifer's memory, which had felt so clear and reliable, had been distorted. What's fascinating is that Jennifer wasn't lying or trying to deceive anyone. Her memory had simply filled in the gaps based on her subconscious perceptions and the stress of the situation. Her mind had constructed a version of events that felt real, even though it wasn't entirely accurate. This tendency for the brain to fill in blanks and create stories from incomplete data is a hallmark of how the subconscious operates. Whether we're navigating a dark hallway, recalling a distant memory, or interpreting subtle social cues, our brains are constantly working to make sense of the world, even when the information we receive is incomplete or imperfect. But why does the brain rely so heavily on filling in gaps, especially when it comes to vision and memory? The answer lies in efficiency. Processing every single piece of information in the environment would be overwhelming. Imagine if you had to consciously think about every sound you hear, every object you see, and every movement you make. Your brain would be overloaded with data, unable to focus on what's truly important. To avoid this, the subconscious mind acts like an editor, sifting through vast amounts of sensory input and keeping only what's relevant. It fills in the gaps where necessary, allowing you to perceive the world without being bogged down by irrelevant details. This editing process happens so seamlessly that you're rarely aware of it. The result is a smooth, continuous experience of reality, one that feels complete, even when the data behind it is fragmented. Think about this the next time you watch a movie. A film is essentially a series of still images, flashed on the screen at a rapid pace. Your brain doesn't see the individual frames. It perceives continuous movement, filling in the gaps between each image. Similarly, when you look at the world, your subconscious mind is constantly stitching together fragments of information to create a complete picture, allowing you to move through life with ease. But, as we've seen, this process isn't foolproof. The brain's habit of filling in gaps can sometimes lead to errors in perception, memory, and judgment. Whether it's the blind spot in your vision or the blind spot in your beliefs, recognizing that your subconscious mind plays an active role in shaping your experience of reality is crucial. So, how can you use this knowledge to your advantage? First, by becoming aware of the gaps that your brain fills in, both in your vision and in your thinking, you can start to question the assumptions you make. When you find yourself certain of a memory or a belief, take a moment to ask, could my mind be filling in gaps? Am I relying on subconscious biases or incomplete data to form my judgment? By acknowledging the role of your subconscious in shaping your perception, you can begin to see the world more clearly, not just through the lens of what your brain automatically fills in, but through a deeper awareness of how your mind operates behind the scenes. In the next chapter, we'll take this exploration of subconscious perception even further as we dive into the realm of body language, an area where your subconscious mind often communicates far more than your words ever could. You'll discover how subtle gestures, facial expressions, and movements can convey messages without you even realizing it, and how your subconscious picks up on these cues to shape your interactions with others. Body language. What you don't say speaks louder. Imagine you're at a cafe, sitting across from someone you've just met. The conversation is light. You're talking about your favorite movies, but something feels off. You can't quite put your finger on it, but their body language is sending signals that don't match their words. Their arms are crossed tightly over their chest. They're leaning back slightly, and their gaze keeps shifting around the room. They're smiling, but it feels forced, almost like they're putting on a mask. Your mind is already drawing conclusions about them, and though you might not consciously know it yet, your subconscious mind has already decided, this person isn't comfortable. Welcome to the world of body language, a form of communication that operates below the surface, often unnoticed, but powerfully influential. From the way we stand to the smallest twitch of an eyebrow, our bodies are constantly sending messages that our subconscious minds are quick to interpret. In fact, the vast majority of our communication is nonverbal. While we like to think words are the primary way we connect with others, much of what we understand about a person comes from their gestures, expressions, posture, and tone of voice. These cues are picked up instantly, often without conscious awareness. The ability to interpret body language is deeply embedded in our biology. Long before humans developed sophisticated language, we relied on nonverbal signals to communicate basic needs, desires, and emotions. Whether it was signaling friendliness or warning others of danger, body language was essential for survival. Over time, this form of communication became ingrained in our subconscious, allowing us to read social situations in an instant, often without even thinking about it. Let's take a step back in time, to our distant ancestors living in small, tight-knit groups. Imagine two individuals who come across each other in the wild. There's no time to have a long conversation about their intentions. Instead, they rely on quick, nonverbal cues to size each other up. Is this person a threat? Are they friendly? Should I approach or keep my distance? In this scenario, body language becomes a life or death matter. One person might puff up their chest, widening their stance to appear larger and more dominant, signaling that they won't back down from a fight. The other might avert their gaze, lower their shoulders, and adopt a submissive posture, signaling that they're not looking for conflict. These signals, processed by the subconscious, help both individuals make split-second decisions about how to interact, all without a single word being exchanged. Fast forward to today, and while the stakes may not be as high, our ability to read body language is just as important. Whether you're at a job interview, on a first date, or negotiating a business deal, your subconscious mind is constantly scanning the other person's body for cues. And they're doing the same to you. One of the most powerful signals we give off is through eye contact. The way we use our eyes can convey confidence, interest, anxiety, or deception. Think about a moment when someone held eye contact with you a little too long, making you feel uncomfortable. Or, on the flip side, when someone avoided eye contact altogether, leaving you wondering if they were hiding something. These are subtle cues, but they can drastically shape how we perceive and interact with others. Research has shown that eye contact is linked to trust. People who maintain steady, natural eye contact during a conversation are often perceived as more honest and trustworthy. On the other hand, those who shift their gaze too much or avoid eye contact might be seen as nervous or deceptive, even if that's not their intention. Our subconscious mind makes these judgments quickly, often within the first few seconds of meeting someone. But it's not just eye contact that matters. Our posture, how we sit, stand, or move, also sends strong signals to those around us. Consider the difference between someone who stands tall with their shoulders back, arms relaxed at their sides, and someone who hunches over, with their arms crossed defensively. The first person radiates confidence and openness, while the second person appears closed off, possibly anxious or uncomfortable. We pick up on these signals without thinking, and they influence how we feel about the person and how we choose to interact with them. There's a reason why crossing your arms is often interpreted as a defensive gesture. It's a subtle way of protecting the vulnerable parts of your body, signaling to others that you're feeling uncomfortable or guarded. This behavior is so ingrained in our subconscious that we often adopt it without realizing it. But the people around us pick up on it, and their subconscious minds respond accordingly. One of the most fascinating aspects of body language is that it can't easily be faked, at least not convincingly. While you can try to force a smile or adopt a confident posture, your subconscious will often betray you with micro-expressions and subtle movements that reveal your true feelings. These micro-expressions are tiny, involuntary facial movements that happen in a fraction of a second. They're so fast that you might not consciously notice them, but your subconscious mind does. For example, someone might smile broadly during a conversation, but if their smile doesn't reach their eyes, your brain will register it as insincere. The muscles around the mouth can be controlled, but the muscles around the eyes, those involved in a genuine smile, are much harder to fake. This is why people often say that the eyes don't lie. When someone's body language contradicts their words, we're more likely to trust what their body is telling us, even if we can't explain why. One famous study conducted by psychologist Paul Ekman demonstrated just how universal and powerful these micro-expressions are. Ekman traveled the world, studying people from vastly different cultures, and found that certain facial expressions, like fear, anger, joy, and sadness, are recognized and understood across all cultures. Even in remote tribes with no exposure to Western media or customs, people instinctively recognize the expression of a smile or a frown. This universality suggests that body language is a fundamental part of human communication, deeply rooted in our evolutionary history. It's something we're born with, and it continues to play a crucial role in how we relate to others. But here's the twist. While we're often good at reading body language in others, we're not always aware of the signals we're sending ourselves. You might think you're appearing calm and confident during a stressful meeting, but your body might be telling a different story. your foot tapping under the table, your hands nervously fidgeting, your posture slouched just slightly. These unconscious movements reveal what's really going on in your mind, and the people around you pick up on them, even if they're not consciously aware of it. Consider a high-stakes job interview. You've prepared for weeks, rehearsed your answers, and dressed the part. As you sit across from the interviewer, you try to project confidence with your words, but your hands keep fidgeting, your posture is slightly rigid, and your smile is a little too tight. You may think you're doing everything right, but your subconscious nervousness is leaking through your body language, and the interviewer senses it. They might not be able to put their finger on what feels off, but they'll notice something isn't quite aligned between what you're saying and what your body is communicating. The good news is that just as body language can betray your nervousness, it can also be harnessed to project confidence and openness if you're aware of it. By understanding the signals you're sending, you can take control of your nonverbal communication and align it with the message you want to convey. One of the most effective ways to do this is through power posing, a technique popularized by social psychologist Amy Cuddy. Cuddy's research showed that adopting certain body postures can not only make you appear more confident to others, but can also change the way you feel about yourself. For example, standing with your arms wide open, hands on your hips, and feet planted firmly on the ground for a few minutes can increase your feelings of confidence and reduce stress. This happens because the body and mind are deeply connected. Changing your physical posture can influence your mental state and vice versa. So, the next time you're in a situation where you need to project confidence, whether it's a presentation, a negotiation, or a social event, pay attention to your body language. Are your shoulders relaxed? Or are they creeping up toward your ears? Are your arms open? Or are you crossing them defensively? By making small adjustments to your posture, you can send powerful signals of confidence and openness, both to others and to your own subconscious mind. In addition to body language, tone of voice plays a crucial role in nonverbal communication. Just like posture and facial expressions, the tone of your voice can convey emotions and intentions that your words might not. We've all experienced moments where someone's tone of voice didn't match their words. Perhaps they said they were fine, but their voice carried a hint of frustration or sadness. Our subconscious mind is quick to pick up on these discrepancies, and they often shape how we interpret the overall message. Even the pitch of your voice can influence how others perceive you. Research has shown that people tend to trust deeper voices more than higher-pitched ones, which is why many leaders and public speakers consciously lower their voices when they want to convey authority and confidence. It's an evolutionary throwback. Our ancestors associated deeper, more resonant voices with dominance and strength. This association persists today, which is why a firm, steady tone can make a big difference in how you're perceived. Let's return to that job interview. Now, imagine you're asked a tough question. Your instinct might be to rush through your answer, raising your voice slightly, and ending on an upward inflection, as if seeking approval. But here's what your subconscious is communicating through your tone: uncertainty. Even if your answer is technically correct, the interviewer might sense that you're not fully confident in what you're saying. This is why it's crucial to be aware not just of what you say, but how you say it. Slowing down, lowering your voice slightly, and using a firm, even tone can make a huge difference in projecting confidence. But let's flip the scenario. Now you're the one on the other side of the table. Maybe you're the interviewer, or perhaps you're meeting a potential business partner. As you engage with the other person, your subconscious mind is constantly scanning their body language, tone of voice, and even micro-expressions, giving you a read on how they're feeling. Are they really confident in their proposal? Or are they just putting on a front? Are they being honest? Or is there something they're not telling you? These subconscious cues often influence the way we feel about others long before we have time to consciously assess the situation. For example, a slight shift in posture, a quick glance away, or a subtle tightening of the lips might make you instinctively question whether the person sitting across from you is being completely truthful, even if everything they've said sounds perfectly reasonable. This ability to pick up on subtle, nonverbal signals has been crucial to human survival. In our evolutionary past, being able to read body language accurately was essential for detecting threats and forming alliances. If someone showed signs of aggression or deceit, it was vital to recognize these cues quickly and respond appropriately. This instinct remains deeply ingrained in us today, helping us navigate the complex social dynamics of modern life. But here's the kicker. We're often better at reading other people's body language than we are at controlling our own. As much as we might try to manage the signals we send, our subconscious mind leaks information through micro-expressions and gestures, which others can pick up on, even if they don't consciously realize it. This is why body language is so powerful. It's difficult to fake and nearly impossible to fully control. A classic example of this comes from poker players. Professional players are masters at reading tells, those small, subconscious movements that give away whether someone is bluffing or holding a strong hand. A player might try to remain perfectly still and calm, but a slight twitch of the hand, a nervous flick of the eyes, or a tightening of the lips can betray their true feelings. These tells, unnoticed by the conscious mind, are picked up by the subconscious, allowing skilled players to gain an edge over their opponents. But even outside the poker table, we all have tells, those subtle, involuntary signals that reveal our true emotions. Maybe you rub your neck when you're nervous, or perhaps you tap your foot when you're impatient. These habits might seem small, but they can have a big impact on how others perceive you. While we can become more aware of these signals, they're often hard to eliminate entirely because they're deeply rooted in the subconscious. So, what's the takeaway here? Understanding body language isn't just about reading other people. It's about becoming more aware of the signals you're sending and how they align with the message you want to convey. If your words are saying one thing, but your body is saying something else, people are far more likely to trust your body. This is why it's so important to align your nonverbal communication with your intentions. Let's return one more time to that cafe where you're sitting across from someone new. Maybe it's a date, maybe a business meeting. You're trying to make a good impression, but you notice that you're starting to fidget, crossing and uncrossing your legs, tapping your fingers on the table. The other person hasn't mentioned it, but you can sense that something in the interaction has shifted. Without realizing it, your subconscious mind has picked up on their subtle discomfort, and now you're reacting with nervous body language of your own. The cycle continues, feeding into itself. But now you're aware. You sit back, uncross your arms, make steady eye contact, and relax your posture. Almost immediately, you feel the energy in the conversation shift. The other person's posture relaxes in response. Their smile becomes more genuine, and the conversation flows more naturally. You've tapped into one of the most powerful aspects of human interaction, the subconscious, nonverbal dance that's constantly happening between two people, whether they realize it or not. This brings us to the deeper point. We are social creatures, and much of our social success comes from understanding and using body language effectively. Whether in personal relationships or professional settings, mastering the art of body language can give you an edge. By becoming more in tune with both your own nonverbal signals and those of others, you can build stronger connections, communicate more clearly, and influence others in subtle, yet powerful ways. The voice, more than just words. Imagine you're in a meeting at work, presenting an idea you've spent weeks refining. As you walk through your points, you notice something troubling. People seem disengaged. A few are checking their phones, others are doodling in their notebooks, and no one is making eye contact. You start to panic. What went wrong? Your idea is solid. You're delivering the information clearly, and you're sure it's relevant. But as you speak, something is missing. Your voice doesn't seem to be landing the way you intended. Now imagine the same scenario, but this time you approach it differently. You begin your presentation with a lower, confident tone, pausing between sentences to let key ideas sink in. You emphasize certain words with a slight change in pitch, drawing attention to your most important points. This time, people sit up, they lean in, they nod along. What changed? The content of your presentation was the same, but the way you used your voice completely altered how people perceived you. This is the power of the voice, not just the words you say, but how you say them. Our voices carry more weight than we often realize, influencing how others perceive us and how they interpret our message. In fact, studies have shown that tone of voice can account for as much as 38% of how people understand what we're communicating, while the actual words we use make up only 7%. The remaining 55%? That's body language, which we covered in the previous chapter. So, why is tone of voice so important? The answer lies in our evolutionary past. Long before humans developed complex language, we used vocalizations to communicate essential information about our emotions, intentions, and even our social status. The way we use our voice today still carries echoes of those ancient times, and our subconscious mind is finely tuned to pick up on these vocal cues. One of the most significant factors in how we interpret a person's voice is pitch, how high or low a voice sounds. In social situations, people with lower-pitched voices are often perceived as more confident, trustworthy, and authoritative. This perception has roots in our evolutionary past, where deeper vocalizations were associated with strength and dominance, traits that were crucial for survival in the wild. Take the example of a male lion roaring to establish dominance over a territory. The deeper and more resonant the roar, the more it signals power and control, discouraging potential challengers. While we humans aren't roaring to claim territory, the principle remains the same. Deeper voices convey authority. It's no coincidence that many political leaders, CEOs, and public speakers work on lowering their pitch to appear more commanding. Even in everyday interactions, a person with a deeper voice is more likely to be seen as someone who's in control, confident, and deserving of attention. This brings us to an interesting experiment involving dating. Researchers found that both men and women subconsciously adjust their voices when they're attracted to someone. In one study, men were asked to compete for a woman's attention. When they spoke to the woman, they unconsciously lowered the pitch of their voices to appear more masculine and dominant, hoping to outshine their competitors. Meanwhile, women's voices became softer and more melodic when speaking to men they were interested in. This adjustment in vocal tone isn't something we consciously plan. It's a natural, subconscious response designed to increase our attractiveness to potential mates. But it's not just about attraction. Our subconscious mind also uses pitch to make judgments about a person's character. In a study where people were asked to judge others based on the sound of their voice, those with higher-pitched voices were often perceived as less confident and even less truthful. In contrast, lower-pitched voices were seen as more genuine and credible. This is why many professional speakers, broadcasters, and public figures are trained to speak in a lower, more measured tone. It sends a signal to the listener's subconscious. I'm confident, I know what I'm talking about, and you should trust me. Of course, pitch isn't the only aspect of voice that affects how we're perceived. Rhythm and pacing, how quickly or slowly we speak, also play a significant role. When someone speaks too quickly, they might come across as nervous, anxious, or overeager, making it difficult for the listener to fully absorb what they're saying. On the other hand, someone who speaks too slowly may seem overly cautious or even dull. Finding the right balance between speed and rhythm is key to holding your audience's attention and ensuring that your message resonates. Let's go back to that work presentation. If you're speaking too quickly, your audience might feel overwhelmed, as if you're rushing through the material. They won't have time to process your ideas, and they may tune out. But if you slow down and pause strategically, especially after important points, you give them time to think, reflect, and fully grasp what you're saying. These pauses can be just as powerful as the words themselves, creating a rhythm that engages the subconscious mind and keeps your listeners hooked. Another factor to consider is intonation, the rise and fall of your voice as you speak. A common mistake people make, especially in professional settings, is ending their sentences on a rising inflection, which can make statements sound like questions. This upward intonation suggests uncertainty, even if the speaker is confident in what they're saying. For example, instead of saying, "Our sales numbers have increased by 15% this quarter," with a strong, downward intonation, they might say, "Our sales numbers have increased by 15% this quarter?" The latter sounds unsure, as if the speaker is seeking confirmation rather than delivering a fact. Your subconscious mind is quick to pick up on these intonations. When someone's voice rises at the end of a sentence, your brain interprets it as a signal that they're not entirely sure of themselves, even if their words say otherwise. This can have a major impact on how they're perceived, especially in high-stakes situations like job interviews, negotiations, or public speaking. Take the example of Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Early in her political career, Thatcher was told that her voice was too high-pitched and that she came across as too aggressive and shrill, particularly when she got passionate about a topic. Realizing how important her voice was in conveying authority, Thatcher worked extensively with a speech coach to lower her pitch and develop a more measured, calm delivery. The result? She became known for her commanding, authoritative presence, a presence that helped her rise to become one of the most powerful leaders in the world. But it's not just pitch, rhythm, and intonation that matter. Volume also plays a role in how we're perceived. Someone who speaks too softly might seem unsure or hesitant, while someone who speaks too loudly can come across as aggressive or overbearing. The key is to find a balance that conveys confidence without being overwhelming. In situations where you want to project authority, raising your volume slightly can signal confidence and control. Conversely, lowering your volume can create an intimate, trusting atmosphere, especially when you want to connect with someone on a deeper level. Let's consider customer service calls as an example. Have you ever called a company to resolve an issue, only to be greeted by someone with a high, overly enthusiastic voice that seemed disconnected from the problem you were dealing with? It likely didn't inspire much confidence in their ability to help. On the other hand, if you were greeted by someone with a calm, steady tone who spoke clearly and confidently, you probably felt more at ease, trusting that they knew what they were doing. This highlights the importance of context. The right tone for a public speech might not be the right tone for a one-on-one conversation. Just as body language adapts to the situation, so too must our voice. A loud, commanding tone might work well in a boardroom presentation, but it could come across as intimidating in a casual conversation with a friend. Similarly, a soft, gentle tone might be perfect for a supportive conversation with a loved one, but inappropriate for a business negotiation where you need to assert your position. The voice, like body language, is deeply tied to our emotions. When we're nervous, our voice naturally rises and speeds up. When we're calm and confident, it lowers and slows down. This is why controlling your emotional state is key to mastering how you use your voice. Deep breathing exercises, for example, can help you slow down your speech and lower your pitch, signaling calmness and control to your listeners. In the same way that body language can affect how we feel, changing the way we use our voice can influence our emotional state. Psychologists call this the feedback loop, the idea that not only do our emotions influence our behavior, but our behavior can also influence our emotions. If you're feeling nervous before a presentation, consciously lowering your pitch, slowing down your pace, and pausing strategically can help you feel more in control, which in turn boosts your confidence. But here's the real power of the voice. Even when you're not consciously thinking about how you're using it, your subconscious mind is constantly at work, shaping how others perceive you and how you perceive yourself. By becoming more aware of the subtle nuances of your voice, its pitch, tone, rhythm, and volume, you can begin to use it more intentionally, aligning your vocal delivery with your message and influencing how others perceive you. Whether you're trying to establish authority, create rapport, or convey empathy, your voice is one of the most powerful tools you have for guiding social interactions and leaving a lasting impression. Let's circle back to the idea of attraction and how your voice subconsciously plays a role in romantic and social dynamics. As we discussed earlier, men often lower their voices when speaking to women they're attracted to, while women might soften or vary their tone to appear more approachable. These adjustments aren't planned. They're a part of a subconscious dance designed to signal interest and compatibility. But why does this happen? It all ties back to evolution. In the same way that deeper voices in men signal dominance and health, research has shown that women's voices change subtly throughout their menstrual cycle, becoming higher-pitched and more attractive to men during the fertile phase of the cycle. This isn't something that either men or women are consciously aware of, but it affects their behavior. Men might be more drawn to a higher-pitched voice during these times, perceiving it as a signal of fertility, while women's voices may shift naturally as part of this evolutionary process. But attraction isn't just about pitch. It's also about emotional connection, and this is where vocal warmth comes into play. When someone speaks in a warm, inviting tone, we naturally feel more comfortable and inclined to trust them. A warm voice suggests empathy, kindness, and openness, qualities that the subconscious mind associates with safety and connection. Let's take a common scenario. A close friend calls you after a stressful day. They ask how you're doing, but it's not just the words that make you feel supported. It's the warmth in their voice, the softness in the way they speak, and the steady rhythm that reassures you. Even without physically seeing them, you feel their presence and your stress starts to melt away. This emotional response is triggered by the subconscious cues in their voice, signaling that they're there for you, ready to listen. On the flip side, a cold or detached voice can have the opposite effect. Imagine calling a friend for support, only to hear them respond in a flat, monotone voice, with no warmth or emotion behind their words. Even if they say all the right things, their tone might leave you feeling unsupported, as though they're not fully present or engaged with you. This is the power of vocal warmth. It can either deepen emotional bonds or create distance, depending on how it's used. Beyond personal relationships, vocal warmth plays a significant role in professional settings as well. Leaders who speak with warmth and empathy are often more effective at inspiring loyalty and commitment from their teams. Think of a manager who speaks with genuine care and concern for their employees' well-being. Their tone of voice sends a message. I see you, I care about you, and I'm here to support you. This fosters a sense of trust and belonging, encouraging employees to go the extra mile because they feel valued. But balance is key. While vocal warmth can build connection, too much warmth without enough authority can come across as lacking confidence. This is why great leaders and communicators strike a balance between warmth and authority. They project empathy and openness when needed, but they can also shift to a firmer, more commanding tone when it's time to take charge or make tough decisions. Take, for example, a CEO delivering a speech to rally their company during a challenging time. They might begin with a tone of warmth and empathy, acknowledging the difficulties their employees are facing and offering words of encouragement. But as the speech progresses, they shift to a more authoritative tone, outlining clear steps for moving forward and instilling confidence in their leadership. This dynamic use of voice allows them to both connect with their audience on an emotional level and establish themselves as a strong, capable leader. This balance between authority and empathy is crucial in nearly all aspects of life, from parenting to politics. People are drawn to those who can communicate both strength and compassion, and the way you use your voice plays a significant role in conveying these traits. When you speak with a firm but warm tone, you signal that you're in control, but you also care about the people around you. This combination is what makes certain individuals natural leaders. It's not just what they say, but how they say it that commands respect and loyalty. Now, let's bring this back to you. The next time you're preparing for an important conversation, whether it's a job interview, a difficult discussion with a friend, or even a public speech, take a moment to think about your voice. Are you speaking too quickly or too softly? Is your pitch too high or too low for the message you want to convey? Are you pausing when needed to let your words sink in? Most importantly, are you using your voice in a way that aligns with your intention, whether that's to project authority, build rapport, or express empathy? Here are a few practical tips to help you master the art of vocal communication. 1. Slow down. Speaking too quickly can signal nervousness or lack of confidence. Practice slowing down your speech, especially when delivering important points. Pausing after key statements gives your listeners time to absorb what you're saying and adds weight to your words. 2. Control your pitch. If you want to project confidence, focus on lowering your pitch slightly, especially at the end of sentences. Avoid rising intonation unless you genuinely need confirmation. 3. Use pauses. Pausing before and after important points can increase the impact of your message. It also helps prevent you from speaking too quickly and gives the listener time to process your ideas. 4. Practice warmth. To build connection, practice speaking with warmth and empathy. Smile while you speak. It naturally warms up your tone. Visualize the person you're talking to and focus on making them feel seen and understood. 5. Find your volume. Match your volume to the setting. In a large room, project your voice with confidence, but in intimate settings, lower your volume to create a sense of closeness and trust. 6. Vocal exercises. Just like athletes warm up their muscles, vocal exercises can help you prepare for important conversations or speeches. Try humming or practicing deep breathing exercises to relax your voice and ensure that your tone and pitch are steady and controlled. The bottom line is this: your voice is a powerful instrument, capable of influencing how others perceive you and how you feel about yourself. By paying attention to the nuances of your voice, pitch, tone, rhythm, and volume, you can take control of the messages you send, both consciously and subconsciously. Memory, a faulty recorder. Picture this. You're sitting around a table with old friends, reminiscing about a memorable trip you all took years ago. One of your friends starts recounting a funny incident, describing the way you got lost on a hiking trail and how everyone panicked. As they go into detail, you nod along, laughing at the memory. But then, something doesn't feel quite right. You don't remember being the one who got lost. You remember it being someone else. A small debate starts, with each of you convinced your version is the right one. So, who's correct? The answer may surprise you. Both of you could be wrong. We like to think of our memories as factual snapshots of the past, reliable, and objective. But the reality is that our brains are not video cameras capturing every detail for later recall. Instead, our memories are reconstructed, edited, and sometimes even rewritten by our subconscious mind. When we remember an event, we're not simply pulling up a file from storage. We're actively piecing together fragments of information, often filling in gaps with guesses, assumptions, and even other memories. This process of memory reconstruction happens automatically and without our awareness. Our subconscious mind steps in to make sense of incomplete information, creating a coherent story even when some details are missing. It's like a puzzle with a few missing pieces, but instead of leaving blank spaces, your brain fills them in with pieces from other parts of your life, often without you realizing it. One of the most fascinating aspects of memory is how easily it can be distorted. Consider the famous case of Solomon Shershevsky, a man with an almost superhuman ability to remember vast amounts of information. He could recall entire conversations, lists of numbers, and details from years past with incredible accuracy. But there was a downside to his extraordinary memory. Shershevsky's mind was so good at remembering individual details that he often struggled to understand the bigger picture. He became overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information he could recall and found it difficult to filter out what was important. His memory was so vivid that it sometimes became more of a burden than a gift. Most of us don't have Shershevsky's remarkable memory. In fact, we tend to forget far more than we remember. But the trade-off is that our brains are very good at simplifying information to make it manageable. Instead of remembering every detail, we focus on the highlights, the most significant parts of an event. Our subconscious mind takes these highlights and stitches them together into a coherent narrative. The problem is, in doing so, our brain often makes assumptions and fills in gaps with details that may not be accurate. Let's say you're trying to recall the last family gathering you attended. You might vividly remember the laughter, the smell of food, and the feeling of warmth in the room. But what about the specifics? Can you recall every dish that was served? What each person was wearing? Every conversation that took place? Probably not. Instead, your brain takes the broad strokes of the memory, the emotions, the key interactions, and fills in the blanks with what seems most likely based on your past experiences and expectations. This tendency to fill in gaps can lead to false memories, where we become convinced that something happened a certain way, even when it didn't. In one famous study, researchers asked participants to recall childhood memories, some of which were real and some of which were fabricated. To their surprise, many participants remembered the false events, describing them in vivid detail as if they had actually occurred. This phenomenon shows just how malleable our memories are. Our subconscious can create entirely new memories that feel just as real as those based on true events. One of the most dramatic examples of false memories can be found in eyewitness testimony. Over the years, countless legal cases have been built around eyewitnesses who claim to have seen a crime take place. But research has shown that eyewitness testimony is far from reliable. In fact, studies suggest that a significant percentage of wrongful convictions are the result of faulty eyewitness accounts. Consider the case of Jennifer Thompson, a woman whose life was changed by a tragic event in 1984. During a terrifying assault, Jennifer made a conscious effort to memorize her attacker's face, determined to identify him later. She later picked a man named Ronald Cotton out of a lineup, and her testimony led to his conviction. But years later, DNA evidence proved that Cotton was innocent. The real attacker had been in the same lineup, yet Jennifer's memory had incorrectly identified Cotton as the perpetrator. Jennifer's memory wasn't malicious or intentionally misleading. It was simply distorted by the stress of the situation and the way her subconscious mind had pieced together the fragments of the event. Over time, her brain had filled in gaps in her memory, leading her to believe with absolute certainty that she had correctly identified the right man. This heartbreaking case illustrates just how powerful and convincing false memories can be. But why does our brain distort memories in the first place? The answer lies in efficiency. Our subconscious mind is constantly working to help us navigate the world without being overwhelmed by information. By filling in gaps and creating coherent stories, our brain allows us to recall the past in a way that makes sense, even if the details aren't always accurate. This process helps us make sense of our experiences and apply them to future situations. But it also means that our memories are far more fluid and flexible than we realize. Take, for example, the rehearsal effect. Each time you recall a memory, your brain essentially replays it, but with each replay, small changes can occur. Just as a story might change slightly each time it's retold, your memories are edited and reshaped with each recollection. Over time, these small changes can accumulate, resulting in a memory that differs significantly from the original event. The more you recall a memory, the more likely it is to change, as your brain continues to update and refine the narrative. What's more, our subconscious mind has a tendency to rewrite history in a way that aligns with our current beliefs and self-perception. If you've ever looked back on a difficult period in your life and noticed that it seems less painful in retrospect, you've experienced this phenomenon firsthand. Your subconscious mind smooths out the rough edges of the past, allowing you to view it through a more positive lens. This is a natural defense mechanism that helps protect us from emotional distress, but it also means that our memories are often more about how we feel now than how we felt then. For example, you might look back on a challenging job you once had and think, it wasn't that bad, even though you remember feeling stressed and overwhelmed at the time. Your brain has reframed the memory to fit your current perspective, allowing you to distance yourself from the negative emotions you experienced back then. This isn't a conscious decision. It's a subconscious process designed to help you move forward. But while this ability to reshape memories can be helpful, it can also lead to biases that distort our understanding of the past. One of the most common biases is confirmation bias, where we tend to remember events in a way that supports our existing beliefs. For example, if you believe you're good at public speaking, you might remember a successful presentation more vividly than one where you struggled. Over time, this selective memory reinforces your belief, even if the evidence is mixed. This process of selective memory can have a profound impact on how we see ourselves and the world around us. Our subconscious mind doesn't just passively store memories. It actively shapes them to fit our narratives, making us feel more certain of our beliefs and experiences than we might have reason to be. So, how can we navigate this tricky terrain? How can we become more aware of the ways our subconscious mind distorts and fills in our memories? The first step is acknowledging that our memories are not perfect. By recognizing that our recollections are subject to distortion, we can approach them with a more critical eye. When you find yourself certain of a memory, take a moment to consider, is it possible that I'm filling in gaps? Could my emotions or beliefs at the time have influenced how I remember this event? One way to combat memory distortion is to write things down. Keeping a journal can help you capture your thoughts and experiences as they happen, preserving them in their original form. Later, when you look back on those entries, you'll have a more accurate record to compare against your current recollections. This practice can help you see how your memories have shifted over time and provide valuable insight into the ways your subconscious mind shapes your perception of the past. Another important strategy is to cross-check your memories with others. As we saw with a group of friends reminiscing about their trip, different people often remember the same event in different ways. By sharing your recollections with others, you can gain new perspectives and fill in gaps in your own memory. This doesn't mean that one version is necessarily right and another wrong, but it can help you build a more complete picture of the past. Finally, it's important to be open to the possibility of change. Our memories are not set in stone. They're dynamic and constantly evolving. By embracing this fluidity, we can become more flexible in how we interpret our past and more mindful of the role our subconscious mind plays in shaping our present. In doing so, we can learn to approach our memories with humility and curiosity, recognizing that they are not flawless records, but malleable stories shaped by our emotions, beliefs, and subconscious mind. By staying open to the possibility that our recollections may be incomplete or biased, we become more self-aware and can better navigate how we understand the past and how it impacts our decisions in the present. But why does this matter so much? Our memories shape our identity. The stories we tell ourselves about who we are, what we've been through, and how we've succeeded or failed are rooted in our recollections of past events. When those memories are distorted or incomplete, they can lead to misunderstandings about ourselves and the world around us. This, in turn, influences our behavior, our choices, and even our relationships. For example, if you have a memory of being unfairly criticized in a previous job, it may lead you to avoid situations where you're open to criticism, even if the criticism was constructive or well-meaning. The memory of that painful experience has been shaped by your subconscious mind in such a way that it continues to affect your actions, often without you realizing it. Similarly, if you remember a past failure as being worse than it actually was, it might cause you to avoid taking risks, even when the potential rewards are great. On the other hand, some people may inflate their memories of success, leading them to take unnecessary risks, overestimate their abilities, or underestimate challenges. This can create a false sense of confidence that may result in poor decision-making down the line. In both cases, the key is understanding that our subconscious mind is constantly editing our memories to make them fit a narrative that aligns with our current sense of self. By becoming aware of this process, we can begin to question our memories and how they influence our behavior. Are they serving us, or are they holding us back? Are they accurate, or have they been distorted by our subconscious mind? One of the best ways to prevent your subconscious from taking control of your memory is to practice mindfulness. By staying present and fully engaged in the moment, you create stronger, more vivid memories that are less likely to be distorted over time. Mindfulness can also help you become more aware of your thoughts and emotions as they happen, allowing you to recognize when your brain is filling in gaps or reshaping your memories to fit your current beliefs. Additionally, cultivating emotional intelligence, the ability to recognize and manage your emotions, can help you understand how your feelings influence your memories. When you're aware of how your emotions color your perceptions, you're better equipped to separate fact from feeling and make more objective decisions. It's also important to challenge your assumptions. When you find yourself convinced of a particular memory or belief, ask yourself whether it's truly based on reality or whether your subconscious has played a role in shaping it. This can be especially helpful in situations where you feel stuck in a certain pattern of behavior or thinking. By questioning your assumptions and being open to new perspectives, you can break free from limiting beliefs and open the door to growth and change. Ultimately, our memories are not fixed, unchanging relics of the past. They are dynamic, evolving narratives that reflect both our past experiences and our present selves. The subconscious mind plays a powerful role in shaping these narratives, often without us realizing it. By becoming more aware of how this process works, we can take greater control over our memories, our behavior, and our future. Emotions, driven by unseen forces. Picture this. You're standing in front of a large audience, about to give a presentation. You've practiced your speech, rehearsed the key points, and even visualized a successful outcome. But as you step up to the microphone, your palms start sweating, your heart begins to race, and a tight knot forms in your stomach. Suddenly, despite all your preparation, you feel a wave of anxiety crashing over you. The logical part of your brain tells you that you're ready, that everything will be fine, but your body and emotions are telling a different story. What's happening here? Why do your emotions sometimes seem to take over, even when your conscious mind is trying to reassure you? The answer lies in the subconscious mind, which plays a crucial role in generating and regulating our emotions. While we might think that our feelings come from our conscious thoughts, such as worrying about what others will think or fearing failure, the reality is that much of our emotional experience is shaped by subconscious processes that we don't fully understand. In many ways, our emotions are ancient tools, developed through evolution to help our ancestors survive in a dangerous world. Long before humans could think rationally or plan for the future, emotions were there to guide behavior. Fear kept our ancestors safe from predators. Anger helped them defend their territory, and joy encouraged them to seek out experiences that improved their well-being. These emotions weren't the result of careful thought. They were automatic reactions triggered by sensory data from the environment. Even today, emotions are often generated in response to subconscious cues picked up by our senses. Let's go back to that presentation scenario. As you walk onto the stage, your brain is processing hundreds of pieces of information in the background. The expressions on people's faces, the sound of their footsteps, the way the room is lit without you realizing it. Your subconscious mind is picking up on subtle environmental cues, some of which may be triggering feelings of anxiety or stress. Maybe you notice a few people in the front row fidgeting, which your brain interprets as disinterest. Or maybe the room is a little too warm, and your body starts to feel uncomfortable. These small details, while barely noticeable on a conscious level, can have a profound impact on your emotional state, sending signals to your brain that something isn't quite right. As a result, you start to feel nervous, even though you can't pinpoint exactly why. This is because emotions are fast, and they often bypass the conscious mind entirely. Neuroscientists have found that emotions can be triggered by the limbic system, the part of the brain responsible for processing feelings. before the neocortex, where rational thought takes place, has a chance to intervene. In other words, by the time you're aware that you're feeling anxious, your brain has already activated the fight or flight response, sending adrenaline coursing through your body. But it's not just fear or anxiety that operates this way. All of our emotions, from joy to sadness to anger, are shaped by the subconscious mind, which is constantly processing sensory data and generating emotional responses. These emotions often emerge without a clear, conscious understanding of their origins, leaving us to guess why we're feeling the way we do. This phenomenon can be seen in the famous experiment known as the bridge study. In this study, male participants were asked to walk across two bridges, one that was stable and secure, and one that was high, narrow, and shaky. On the other side of each bridge was an attractive woman who asked the participants to fill out a survey and gave them her phone number for follow-up questions. The results were fascinating. The men who crossed the unstable, shaky bridge were far more likely to call the woman later than those who crossed the stable bridge. Why? The researchers concluded that the heightened arousal, the physical symptoms of fear and excitement from crossing the dangerous bridge, were misattributed by the participants as feelings of romantic attraction toward the woman. Their subconscious mind had blurred the lines between fear and desire, creating an emotional response that didn't match the situation. This study highlights a key point. Our conscious mind often struggles to interpret our emotions correctly because many of our feelings are driven by subconscious biases and sensory data that we aren't fully aware of. In the case of the bridge study, the men didn't realize that their feelings of excitement were being fueled by the danger of the bridge rather than the attractiveness of the woman. This misattribution of emotion is common, and it can lead us to make decisions based on faulty emotional logic. Have you ever felt an inexplicable sense of irritation or frustration, only to later realize that you were hungry or tired? In these moments, your subconscious mind is picking up on physical cues from your body, like low blood sugar or fatigue, and generating emotions in response. Your conscious mind, however, might not connect these feelings to their true cause, leading you to snap at a friend or make an impulsive decision. This disconnect between the subconscious and conscious mind is one of the reasons why emotions can be so difficult to manage and understand. So, how can we make sense of our emotions when they seem to arise out of nowhere? One approach is to tune into the signals your body is sending. Because emotions often start with physical sensations, becoming more aware of your body can help you identify the source of your feelings. Are your muscles tense? Is your heart racing? Are you breathing shallowly? These physical clues can provide insight into the emotions your subconscious mind is generating. Let's say you're feeling inexplicably angry during a conversation with a coworker. Instead of reacting immediately, take a moment to notice what's happening in your body. Maybe your shoulders are tight, or you feel a knot in your stomach. These physical sensations can help you realize that your anger might not be about the conversation at all. It could be a response to stress, fatigue, or another underlying factor. By recognizing the physical component of your emotions, you can create a little space between the feeling and the reaction, giving yourself time to respond more thoughtfully. Another helpful tool is emotional labeling. Studies have shown that simply naming the emotion you're feeling, whether it's anxiety, frustration, or excitement, can reduce its intensity. When you put a label on an emotion, you engage the neocortex, the part of the brain responsible for rational thought. This helps you process the emotion in a more logical, detached way, rather than being overwhelmed by it. For example, if you find yourself feeling nervous before a big presentation, try saying to yourself, "I'm feeling anxious." By identifying the emotion, you shift the focus from the feeling itself to your awareness of it, which gives you more control over how you handle it. This technique doesn't eliminate the emotion, but it can reduce its power over you by making it less overwhelming. It's also important to recognize that not all emotions are tied to external events. Sometimes, our feelings are influenced by subconscious biases that have been shaped by our past experiences. Let's say you've had a series of negative interactions with a particular colleague, and now, whenever you see them, you feel a sense of irritation, even if they haven't done anything wrong in the moment. This emotional reaction is the result of your brain associating that person with past negative experiences, and your subconscious mind is generating an emotional response based on that association. This type of emotional bias can be difficult to break because it operates below the level of conscious awareness. However, by bringing these patterns into the light, you can begin to challenge them. Ask yourself, Is my reaction to this person based on something that's happening right now, or is it rooted in the past? By questioning the origin of your emotions, you can start to separate old biases from your current experience. Of course, not all subconscious emotions are negative. In many cases, our gut feelings, those intuitive flashes of insight that seem to come out of nowhere, can be incredibly valuable. These instincts are often based on subconscious pattern recognition, where your brain picks up on subtle cues that your conscious mind misses. For example, if you get a bad vibe from someone, your subconscious mind may be noticing small inconsistencies in their body language, tone of voice, or facial expressions, signaling to you that something isn't quite right. In these moments, it's important to trust your gut while also taking the time to reflect on where the feeling is coming from. Is it based on real, observable information, or is it rooted in a subconscious bias? By balancing instinct with reflection, you can use your emotions as a powerful guide without letting them steer you in the wrong direction. Ultimately, our emotions are a complex mix of subconscious and conscious processes. While we can't always control how we feel, we can learn to better understand our emotions by paying attention to the physical and psychological cues that shape them. By becoming more aware of how the subconscious mind influences our emotional responses, we can gain greater control over our reactions, make more informed decisions, and navigate our emotional landscape with greater clarity. The scientist versus the lawyer. Defending beliefs. Imagine you're sitting at a family dinner, and a heated discussion begins about a controversial topic: politics, climate change, or health. You present what you believe to be solid, factual evidence that supports your point of view. You lay out your arguments calmly, logically, and with clarity. But instead of changing their mind, the person on the other side of the table doubles down. They reject your facts outright, insisting that their viewpoint is correct, even though the evidence contradicts it. Why does this happen? Why do we defend our beliefs so fiercely, even when we're presented with solid evidence to the contrary? The answer, as you might have guessed, lies deep within the subconscious mind. While we like to think of ourselves as rational, objective thinkers, constantly weighing evidence and adjusting our views based on new information, the truth is that much of our thinking is shaped by subconscious biases. These biases influence how we interpret information, what we accept as truth, and how we defend our beliefs. Our subconscious mind has two distinct roles when it comes to beliefs. On one hand, there is the scientist, the part of our brain that's genuinely curious, seeking out truth, weighing evidence, and trying to make sense of the world. The scientist mind thrives on exploration, discovery, and open-mindedness. It's the part of you that reads articles, watches documentaries, and seeks out new perspectives with a genuine desire to learn. But alongside the scientist, there is also the lawyer, the part of our brain that's not interested in finding the truth, but rather in defending the beliefs we already hold. This is the part of us that jumps to justify our opinions, ignore contradictory evidence, and twist facts to fit our existing worldview. The lawyer mind isn't concerned with objectivity. It's concerned with winning the argument, even if it means ignoring the truth. The subconscious mind often defaults to the lawyer because defending our existing beliefs is easier and more comfortable than challenging them. In fact, our brains are wired to favor information that confirms what we already believe, a phenomenon known as confirmation bias. This is why, when presented with new information, we tend to seek out evidence that supports our current views while dismissing or downplaying anything that contradicts them. Take, for example, the debate over climate change. Someone who strongly believes that climate change isn't real might dismiss mountains of scientific evidence to the contrary. Instead, they'll focus on the few isolated studies or opinions that support their viewpoint, giving them more weight than they deserve. This isn't because they're being deliberately ignorant. It's because their subconscious mind is working overtime to protect their existing belief system, acting like a lawyer defending a client. But why does the brain do this? The answer lies in our need for cognitive consistency. Human beings are uncomfortable with cognitive dissonance, the mental discomfort that arises when we hold two contradictory beliefs at the same time. When faced with evidence that challenges our beliefs, the brain scrambles to resolve this dissonance by rejecting the new information, rationalizing it away, or reinterpreting it to fit our existing worldview. This process happens automatically below the level of conscious thought. In fact, neuroscientists have found that when people are presented with information that challenges their beliefs, the emotion centers of the brain light up more than the reasoning centers. This suggests that when our beliefs are threatened, we respond emotionally, not logically. Our brains perceive the challenge as an attack, and we react defensively, just as we would if we were physically threatened. This tendency to defend our beliefs is deeply rooted in our evolutionary past. In ancient times, holding firm to a shared belief system was essential for group cohesion and survival. Early humans lived in tight-knit groups, and maintaining consensus on important issues, whether it was about the best way to hunt, or to settle, or which threats to prioritize, was crucial. Those who questioned the group's beliefs risked being ostracized or left behind, a situation that could be fatal in the harsh environments of our ancestors. This need for group loyalty still influences us today. Even though the stakes aren't as high, we still feel a strong psychological pressure to align our beliefs with those of the groups we belong to, whether it's our family, our community, or our political affiliation. When someone presents evidence that challenges a belief that's tied to our identity or social group, our subconscious mind goes into overdrive, working to protect that belief. The lawyer steps in, building a case for why the new information should be rejected, and reinforcing the walls around our existing worldview. This is why changing long-held beliefs is so difficult, even when faced with overwhelming evidence. The subconscious mind works tirelessly to defend those beliefs, filtering out information that doesn't fit and clinging to evidence that supports the status quo. It's not that we're incapable of changing our minds. It's that our subconscious has a strong preference for stability and consistency. So, what can we do about this? How can we shift from the lawyer mindset to the scientist mindset, becoming more open to new information and more willing to challenge our beliefs? The first step is awareness. By recognizing that our brains are wired to defend our beliefs, we can begin to question our own reactions when we're presented with new information. The next time you find yourself automatically dismissing an argument or rejecting a piece of evidence, ask yourself, is this my lawyer mind at work? Am I reacting emotionally rather than logically? Once you've identified this tendency, the next step is to slow down. Our emotional, lawyer-like reactions happen quickly and instinctively, but rational thought takes more time. By pausing and giving yourself a moment to reflect, you can engage the more rational, scientist part of your brain. Instead of immediately dismissing the information, try to approach it with curiosity. Ask yourself, what if this new perspective is right? What can I learn from it? It's also helpful to seek out diverse viewpoints. One of the reasons we fall into confirmation bias is that we tend to surround ourselves with people and information that reinforce our existing beliefs. Whether it's the news we consume, the people we follow on social media, or the conversations we have, we often live in echo chambers where our views are constantly validated. To counter this, make an effort to expose yourself to a variety of perspectives. Engage with people who hold different views, read articles from sources you don't normally follow, and challenge yourself to see the other side of the argument. At first, this can feel uncomfortable. It may trigger cognitive dissonance, and your lawyer mind will likely resist. But over time, this practice can help you develop a more open and flexible mindset. The more you engage with diverse perspectives, the more comfortable you become with the idea that your beliefs are not set in stone, that they can evolve as you encounter new information. It's also important to recognize that changing your mind is not a sign of weakness. In many ways, it's a sign of strength, of intellectual humility, and a genuine desire to seek truth. The scientist mindset embraces change, understanding that our beliefs should be fluid, evolving as we gain new insights and knowledge. Finally, remember that it's okay to hold on to beliefs that are meaningful to you, even if they're challenged by new information. The goal isn't to abandon everything you believe, but rather to approach your beliefs with awareness and intentionality. When you hold a belief, do so consciously, recognizing why it matters to you and being open to reevaluating it if new evidence emerges. Ultimately, the battle between the scientist and the lawyer is one that plays out in all of us. While the lawyer mind can serve a purpose, helping us defend our values and maintain cognitive stability, it's the scientist mind that allows us to grow, to learn, and to become more open-minded, compassionate individuals. The illusion of uniqueness. Why we think we're special. Imagine you're sitting in a classroom on the first day of a new course. The professor asks everyone to rate themselves on various traits: intelligence, creativity, leadership abilities, and kindness. You confidently mark yourself as above average on most, if not all, of these qualities. As you look around the room, You get the sense that you're not alone in this self-assessment. It's not that you think you're the best in the room, but surely you're among the top half. Here's the catch. Almost everyone in the room likely thinks the same thing. This phenomenon, known as illusory superiority, is a cognitive bias where people tend to overestimate their abilities and qualities compared to others. It's one of the most fascinating ways our subconscious mind shapes our self-perception, leading us to believe we are unique, special, or exceptional, even when we may not be. In fact, a classic study from the late 20th century asked a large group of college students to rate themselves in terms of driving ability. The vast majority, nearly 80%, rated themselves as above-average drivers, which is statistically impossible. This is known as the Lake Wobegon effect, named after a fictional town where all the women are strong, all the men are good-looking, and all the children are above average. The subconscious mind doesn't just convince us that we're better at things like driving. It can shape how we see ourselves in terms of moral character, intelligence, creativity, and even attractiveness. While a healthy sense of self-worth is important, this bias can often lead us to view ourselves through a distorted lens, causing us to overestimate our abilities or underplay our weaknesses. But why does this happen? Why do we tend to see ourselves as better than average, even when evidence suggests otherwise? One explanation is that the illusion of uniqueness is a defense mechanism built into our subconscious mind to protect our self-esteem. If we didn't believe we were special, it would be difficult to cope with the setbacks, failures, and challenges that life inevitably throws our way. The subconscious mind is constantly working to preserve a positive self-image, and part of this involves convincing us that we're more capable and deserving than we might actually be. Take, for example, the workplace. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you deserved a promotion or recognition, but someone else got it instead? In that moment, it's easy to think, I'm more qualified than they are, or I deserve that more. But what if, in reality, the other person was just as capable, if not more so? The illusion of uniqueness can cloud our ability to see the strengths of others, leading us to believe that we stand out more than we really do. This is especially evident when we consider success. When things go well in our lives, we tend to attribute that success to our own unique abilities or hard work. If you land a promotion at work, you might tell yourself it's because you're particularly skilled or driven. But when things don't go our way, when we fail or face challenges, we're more likely to blame external factors, bad luck, unfair circumstances, or other people's mistakes. This is known as the self-serving bias, and it's another way the subconscious mind protects our self-image by keeping us in a positive light. But while this illusion of uniqueness can boost our self-confidence, it can also lead to blind spots, areas where we fail to recognize our own limitations or overestimate our abilities. Consider a man named Chris, who was confident that he was an exceptional leader. Chris saw himself as a visionary, someone who could inspire and motivate his team to greatness. But when his company conducted a 360-degree review, a process where employees provide anonymous feedback on their managers, Chris was shocked by what he heard. His team described him as aloof, unapproachable, and disconnected from the day-to-day challenges they faced. He wasn't the inspiring leader he thought he was. Chris's experience isn't uncommon. Many of us have blind spots when it comes to our abilities, especially in areas where we feel particularly strong. The subconscious mind reinforces our positive self-image, convincing us that we're better than we are, even when the evidence suggests otherwise. This can lead to overconfidence, which can be damaging in both personal and professional settings. But it's not just our abilities that we overestimate. We also tend to see ourselves as more morally upright than others. Psychologists have found that people consistently rate themselves as more ethical, honest, and trustworthy than their peers. In one study, participants were asked to rate how likely they were to lie in various situations, and they consistently rated themselves as less likely to lie than others, even though most people admitted they had lied at least once in the past. This moral superiority bias is another way the subconscious mind protects our sense of self. We all want to believe that we're good people, that we're more honest or ethical than those around us. But this bias can blind us to our own shortcomings, making it harder for us to recognize when we've made a mistake or acted in ways that don't align with our values. The illusion of uniqueness also plays a role in how we perceive risk. Many of us believe that the bad things that happen to others, car accidents, illnesses, job losses, are unlikely to happen to us. This is known as optimism bias, and it can lead us to take unnecessary risks because we believe we're immune to the negative consequences that others face. For example, think about how many people underestimate the risks of smoking or not wearing a seatbelt. Despite knowing the statistics, smokers often convince themselves that they'll be one of the lucky few who don't develop lung cancer. Or drivers might believe that they're skilled enough to avoid accidents without needing a seatbelt. This optimistic outlook can be dangerous, as it leads us to believe that we're somehow different or special, immune to the rules that apply to everyone else. While the illusion of uniqueness can lead to overconfidence, it can also foster a sense of loneliness or isolation. When we believe that our experiences are entirely unique, we might feel that no one else can truly understand what we're going through. This can lead us to disconnect from others, even when they're facing similar challenges. Take the example of someone going through a difficult breakup. They might believe that their heartbreak is unlike anything anyone else has ever experienced, and as a result, they might withdraw from friends or family who try to offer support. In reality, heartbreak is a universal experience, and others may have valuable insights or comfort to offer. But the illusion of uniqueness can create emotional distance, making us feel more alone than we really are. So, how do we overcome this illusion? How can we see ourselves more clearly, recognizing both our strengths and weaknesses without being blinded by overconfidence or false superiority? The first step is self-awareness. By recognizing that we have a tendency to overestimate our abilities, we can begin to question our own assumptions. When you find yourself feeling certain that you're better or more deserving than others, take a moment to reflect. Is this my subconscious mind protecting my ego? Are there areas where I might not be seeing the full picture? Another helpful tool is to seek feedback from others. Just as Chris learned from his 360-degree review, getting honest, constructive feedback from those around us can help us identify our blind spots and see ourselves more objectively. While it can be uncomfortable to hear criticism, it's one of the most effective ways to grow and improve. It's also important to practice empathy. By recognizing that others are just as complex and capable as we are, we can start to see beyond our own uniqueness and appreciate the strengths of those around us. Empathy helps us bridge the gap between ourselves and others, reminding us that while we are all unique in some ways, we also share many common experiences. Finally, cultivating humility is key. While it's important to have confidence in your abilities, it's equally important to recognize that you're not immune to mistakes, failures, or challenges. Humility allows you to accept your limitations without feeling diminished by them, and it opens the door to learning and growth. In the end, the illusion of uniqueness is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it can boost our confidence and help us navigate life's challenges with optimism and resilience. But on the other hand, it can blind us to our weaknesses and create unrealistic expectations. By becoming more aware of this bias, we can strike a balance between self-assurance and self-reflection, leading to a more accurate and fulfilling understanding of ourselves. Social creatures, the power of belonging. Picture this. You're at a party and you don't know anyone. As you enter the room, you glance around, trying to find a friendly face. Your heart races a little and you feel a slight unease. You might smile awkwardly, hoping to catch someone's eye, but as you wander through the crowd, you feel out of place. You notice small cliques of people chatting, laughing, and clearly enjoying themselves. Everyone seems to be connected, except you. The feeling grows stronger. You don't belong. This discomfort is deeply rooted in human nature, far beyond mere awkwardness. It's tied to one of the most fundamental needs of our subconscious mind, the need to belong. From the moment we are born, we rely on social connection for survival. As helpless infants, our very existence depends on the care and attention of others. As we grow older, these social bonds remain essential, not just for survival, but for emotional well-being, success, and even physical health. The desire to belong is ingrained in our biology and is one of the most powerful motivators driving human behavior. At the heart of this need is the subconscious mind, which constantly monitors our social environment for signs of inclusion or exclusion. When we feel accepted, it triggers positive emotions, releasing oxytocin, the bonding hormone, and generating feelings of happiness and security. But when we experience exclusion or rejection, the emotional pain can be profound. In fact, studies have shown that social rejection activates the same regions of the brain as physical pain. This connection between social and physical pain is no accident. For our ancestors, belonging to a group was essential for survival. Early humans lived in small, tight-knit communities where cooperation was necessary to hunt, gather food, and protect against predators. Being ostracized or excluded from the group could mean death. As a result, our brains evolved to treat social rejection as a serious threat, sending alarm signals that something is wrong. These subconscious alarms still operate today. Imagine receiving a cold shoulder from a group of friends, or being left out of a social event. Even though there's no immediate physical danger, your brain reacts as if you've been physically hurt. You may feel a knot in your stomach, a tightness in your chest, or a sinking feeling that something is terribly wrong. This reaction is the anterior cingulate cortex, the brain region responsible for processing both physical and emotional pain, at work, alerting you to the social threat. This powerful emotional response is why loneliness can feel so unbearable. Studies have shown that chronic loneliness isn't just emotionally painful, it can also have serious effects on our physical health. Research has found that people who are socially isolated are more likely to suffer from high blood pressure, weakened immune systems, and even shorter lifespans. In fact, the health risks associated with loneliness have been compared to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. But why does loneliness have such a profound impact on our health? The answer lies in the way our subconscious mind perceives social threats. When we feel isolated or disconnected, our body enters a state of chronic stress. This triggers the release of cortisol, a stress hormone that can wreak havoc on the body when present in high levels for extended periods of time. Over time, this chronic stress weakens the immune system, making us more susceptible to illness, and increases the risk of cardiovascular problems. On the flip side, when we feel a strong sense of belonging, when we are surrounded by supportive friends, family, or community, our body responds in kind. The release of oxytocin and other feel-good chemicals helps lower stress levels, strengthen the immune system, and even speed up recovery from illness or injury. Social connection, it turns out, is not just good for our mental health, it's essential for our physical health as well. This brings us to a crucial point. The subconscious mind is constantly working to ensure that we stay connected to others. Whether we realize it or not, much of our behavior is motivated by the desire to be accepted, liked, and included. Think about how often you adjust your behavior, tone, or opinions to fit in with a group. Maybe you downplay a strong opinion to avoid conflict, laugh at a joke you don't really find funny, or nod along in agreement when you're not entirely sure. These small adjustments, often made subconsciously, are all part of the brain's effort to maintain social harmony and ensure that you stay within the group. It's not always about people-pleasing, sometimes it's about survival. The subconscious mind knows that social bonds are key to well-being, and it subtly nudges us to behave in ways that will strengthen those bonds. But what happens when we're faced with rejection or exclusion? One of the most painful examples of this is bullying, which targets a person's social standing and sense of belonging. Victims of bullying often experience feelings of worthlessness and isolation, as their subconscious mind interprets the exclusion as a serious threat. This is why the effects of bullying can be long-lasting and devastating, not just emotionally, but physically as well. Consider the story of Rebecca, a high school student who was relentlessly bullied by her peers. The exclusion, name-calling, and social isolation took a severe toll on her self-esteem. Over time, Rebecca's health began to suffer. She experienced frequent headaches, stomach issues, and even developed insomnia. Her subconscious mind, perceiving the bullying as a threat to her social survival, kept her in a state of constant stress, which manifested in physical symptoms. Rebecca's experience is far from unique. Research has shown that people who experience chronic rejection or exclusion are more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues. But the effects don't stop there. Social rejection can also lower self-esteem and trigger a cycle of self-doubt, making it harder for individuals to form meaningful connections in the future. So, how can we combat the negative effects of exclusion and foster a greater sense of belonging? One powerful antidote to loneliness and social rejection is to actively seek out connection. While this may seem obvious, it's not always easy. For those who feel isolated or disconnected, taking the first step to reach out can feel daunting. But even small actions like calling a friend, joining a club, or volunteering in your community can help rebuild your social network and improve your mental and physical health. It's also important to practice self-compassion. When we experience rejection, it's easy to fall into a spiral of self-blame or negative thinking. But by treating ourselves with kindness and understanding, we can reduce the emotional impact of exclusion and start to rebuild our sense of worth. Another powerful tool for fostering social connection is empathy. By putting ourselves in others' shoes and recognizing that everyone has a deep need for belonging, we can become more compassionate and supportive in our relationships. Empathy helps bridge the gap between ourselves and others, reminding us that we are not as different as we might think. But belonging isn't just about fitting in with any group, it's about finding the right group. While the subconscious mind drives us to seek social acceptance, it's important to remember that not all social environments are healthy. For example, if you're in a group where you constantly feel pressure to conform, you may be sacrificing your own values for the sake of fitting in. Over time, this can lead to feelings of inauthenticity and emotional exhaustion. This is why it's crucial to seek out authentic connections, relationships where you feel valued and accepted for who you truly are. When you're in a group where you can be yourself, your subconscious mind no longer feels the need to constantly monitor your behavior or adjust your personality to fit in. This sense of psychological safety allows you to relax, be vulnerable, and form deeper, more meaningful relationships. Let's return to the party scene we started with. As you navigate the room, searching for a sense of connection, you finally strike up a conversation with someone who shares your interests. Slowly, the initial discomfort fades, and you start to feel a sense of belonging. Your subconscious mind, which had been on high alert, now starts to relax. You feel a sense of relief and contentment, knowing that you're part of the group. This is the power of social connection. Our subconscious minds are wired to seek it out. And when we find it, the rewards are immense, not just emotionally, but physically as well. By nurturing our social bonds and fostering a sense of belonging, we can improve our health, boost our happiness, and create a stronger sense of purpose in life. The pull of the group, conformity, and social influence. Imagine you're at a company meeting where your boss asks the team for feedback on a new project. As your colleagues start to chime in, most of them express enthusiasm and support for the plan. You, however, aren't convinced. There are issues you've noticed that might cause problems down the road. But as you listen to everyone else's positive comments, you start to second-guess yourself. Maybe you're overthinking it. Maybe you miss something that everyone else sees. When it's your turn to speak, you hesitate for a moment, then, to avoid standing out, you offer lukewarm praise for the project, just like everyone else. Sound familiar? This is a classic example of conformity, the tendency to align our behavior, opinions, and beliefs with those of the group, even when we might feel differently. Conformity is one of the most powerful social forces, and it operates largely on a subconscious level. Our desire to belong and avoid conflict often compels us to go along with the crowd, even when it means sacrificing our own judgment. But why is conformity such a powerful force? And why do we so often defer to the group, even when we believe we might be right? The answer lies in the social nature of our brains. Human beings evolved in groups, and for much of our history, survival depended on cooperation and consensus. In ancient times, going against the group could mean being cast out of the tribe, something that in the dangerous environments of the past could be fatal. As a result, our brains are wired to prioritize social harmony over individual expression, especially when it comes to group dynamics. This drive to fit in is so strong that we often conform without even realizing it. One of the most famous studies on this topic is the Asch conformity experiment, conducted in the 1950s by psychologist Solomon Asch. In this experiment, participants were placed in a room with a group of actors and shown a series of lines of different lengths. The task was simple. Participants were asked to identify which line was the longest. At first, the actors gave the correct answers, and the participant would agree. But as the experiment continued, the actors began to deliberately choose the wrong answer. The question was, would the participant go along with the group's incorrect choice or stick to what they knew was right? The results were striking. In about 75% of the trials, participants conformed to the group at least once, giving an answer they knew was wrong, just to fit in. This study revealed the powerful influence that social pressure can have on our decision-making. Even when the truth is clear, the desire to avoid standing out or causing conflict can lead us to conform. This tendency is deeply rooted in the subconscious mind, where the need for acceptance and belonging is constantly at play. In group settings, our subconscious evaluates the potential risks of standing out versus the benefits of blending in. Often, the fear of being seen as an outsider outweighs the desire to express our true opinions, so we fall in line with the group's behavior. Conformity isn't always a bad thing. In many cases, it helps maintain social cohesion and allows groups to function smoothly. For example, following societal norms, like standing in line, obeying traffic rules, or respecting others' personal space, helps create order and predictability in our daily lives. These unwritten rules are essential for keeping society running, and they're often enforced by subconscious social cues like disapproving looks or awkward silences when someone steps out of line. But the downside of conformity becomes apparent when it leads us to make decisions that go against our best interests or personal values. When we prioritize fitting and overthinking critically, we can end up compromising our integrity or making choices that don't align with who we really are. Take the example of groupthink, a phenomenon that occurs when a group becomes so focused on maintaining harmony that they ignore warning signs or dissenting opinions. Groupthink can be especially dangerous in high-stakes situations, such as in government or corporate decision-making. One of the most famous examples of groupthink is the Bay of Pigs invasion in 1961, where U.S. government officials failed to adequately challenge a flawed plan to invade Cuba. The desire to avoid conflict and present a united front led to poor decision-making, resulting in a disastrous military failure. Groupthink shows how the subconscious mind's drive for cohesion and conformity can lead us astray, even in situations where critical thinking is essential. When everyone in the group is on the same page, it becomes harder for individuals to raise objections or express doubts. The pressure to conform can be overwhelming, leading people to silence their concerns in order to maintain group unity. But why do we conform so easily? The subconscious mind is constantly weighing the social costs of standing out. In many cases, going against the group can lead to feelings of isolation, rejection, or judgment. These social consequences can feel just as real and just as painful as physical threats. Our brains have evolved to avoid these social risks, which is why we so often go along with the crowd, even when we know better. This is also why social norms are so powerful. Norms are the unwritten rules of behavior that guide how we interact with others, and they vary from culture to culture. While you might not consciously think about the norms that govern your behavior, your subconscious mind is constantly keeping track, making sure you don't step outside the bounds of what's acceptable. For example, imagine walking into an elevator and facing the back wall instead of the door. You'd immediately feel uncomfortable, even though there's no logical reason why it's wrong to face the back. Your subconscious mind has learned the norm: face the door, and it alerts you when you deviate from it. But social norms don't just guide trivial behavior like elevator etiquette. They also shape our values and beliefs. In many cases, we adopt the norms of our social group without questioning them. For instance, if you grow up in a community where certain political views or religious beliefs are dominant, you're likely to adopt those views yourself, even if you don't fully understand or agree with them. The subconscious mind seeks to maintain social belonging, so it nudges us to conform to the beliefs and values of those around us. This is particularly evident in adolescence, a time when the drive for social acceptance is at its peak. Teenagers are especially vulnerable to the pressures of peer influence, often changing their behavior or opinions to fit in with their social group. Whether it's the clothes they wear, the music they listen to, or their stance on social issues, teens are highly attuned to the norms of their peer group, and their subconscious minds push them to conform in order to avoid rejection. While the drive to conform is strong, there are times when people choose to stand out, go against the group, or challenge the norm. This takes courage, and often, it involves overcoming the subconscious fear of social consequences. History is full of examples of individuals who defied the status quo, from Martin Luther King Jr. challenging racial segregation to Malala Yousafzai standing up for girls' education. These individuals were willing to face criticism, rejection, and even physical danger because their commitment to their beliefs outweighed their fear of exclusion. So, how can we balance the need for social harmony with the courage to think critically and act independently? One approach is to become aware of when conformity is influencing your decisions. The next time you're in a group setting, ask yourself, am I going along with the group because I truly agree, or am I afraid of standing out? This simple reflection can help you recognize when the subconscious mind is nudging you to conform and give you the opportunity to consider whether it's the right choice. Another strategy is to cultivate self-confidence. The more secure you feel in your own beliefs and values, the less likely you are to be swayed by social pressure. Confidence doesn't mean ignoring others' opinions. It means having the strength to hold on to your own, even when they're unpopular. By building a strong sense of self, you can resist the subconscious pull to conform and stay true to your convictions. It's also important to create an environment where dissent is welcomed. Whether in the workplace, in your friendships, or in your family, encouraging open dialogue and diverse perspectives can help counteract the effects of groupthink. When people feel safe expressing different viewpoints, the group becomes more dynamic, creative, and capable of making better decisions. By fostering an environment where conformity isn't the default, you can encourage independent thinking and healthier group dynamics. Finally, remember that it's okay to challenge norms. Social norms exist for a reason, but they're not always right, and they're not set in stone. If a norm no longer serves its purpose, or if it conflicts with your values, don't be afraid to question it. History has shown that some of the greatest social progress comes from individuals who are willing to stand up and say, "This isn't right." The subconscious power of your voice. Imagine you're on the phone with a friend. They've called you for advice on a personal issue, and as they speak, you notice their voice sounds off. There's a slight tremor in their tone, a hesitation between words that you've never heard before. Without seeing their face or knowing the full story, your subconscious mind is already telling you that something's wrong. Before they've even said anything about their problem, your intuition has picked up on their emotional state. This is the power of the voice, a tool of communication that goes far beyond the words we speak. Our voice conveys our emotions, intentions, and personality, often more effectively than language itself. And while we might consciously focus on what we say, it's the subconscious aspects of our voice, tone, pitch, rhythm, and pace that reveal our true feelings. Let's consider tone. Have you ever heard someone say, "I'm fine," in a way that clearly communicates the opposite? The words themselves may be neutral or positive, but the tone of voice can reveal frustration, sadness, or anger. This disconnect between the words and the tone is something our subconscious mind is incredibly attuned to. We don't just listen to what people say, we interpret how they say it. The tone of our voice is often influenced by our emotional state, which is regulated by the subconscious mind. When we're nervous, for example, our voice might become higher-pitched and shaky. When we're confident, our tone is likely to be lower and more steady. These changes happen automatically, without conscious effort. It's our brain's way of communicating emotions and intentions through vocal cues. One of the most well-known studies on how tone affects perception was conducted by psychologist Albert Mehrabian in the 1970s. His research found that when it comes to conveying feelings and attitudes, tone of voice is far more important than the actual words spoken. In fact, he concluded that 38% of communication is based on tone, while only 7% is based on the actual words. The remaining 55% comes from body language. This explains why two people can say the same sentence, but have it interpreted in completely different ways depending on their tone. Consider the phrase, "What are you doing here?" Depending on the tone, this could be a warm, welcoming question from a friend, or a suspicious, accusatory remark from a stranger. The words remain the same, but the tone changes everything. Pitch is another element of the voice that plays a significant role in communication. Research has shown that people with lower-pitched voices are often perceived as more authoritative, trustworthy, and confident. This is especially true in professional settings, where a deeper voice can signal competence and leadership. On the other hand, higher-pitched voices can be associated with excitement, nervousness, or even uncertainty. The connection between pitch and perception is rooted in evolution. In the animal kingdom, deeper, more resonant sounds are often used to establish dominance and assert power. For example, the low growl of a lion signals strength and authority, while higher-pitched sounds are often interpreted as submissive or non-threatening. Humans have inherited this instinct, and it still influences how we perceive others based on the pitch of their voice. But pitch isn't just about social dominance. In certain contexts, a higher pitch can actually make you more approachable and relatable. For example, people often raise the pitch of their voice when speaking to children or pets, signaling warmth and care. This vocal shift helps establish a connection and communicates that the speaker is non-threatening. The subconscious mind picks up on these changes in pitch and adjusts our perceptions accordingly. This brings us to another fascinating aspect of vocal communication: rhythm and pace. Have you ever noticed that when you're excited or nervous, you tend to speak faster? Conversely, when you're calm and confident, your speech slows down. These changes in rhythm happen naturally and reveal a great deal about your emotional state. A fast pace can indicate enthusiasm or anxiety, while a slower, more deliberate rhythm suggests confidence and control. Let's take an example from public speaking. Seasoned speakers often use pauses strategically to emphasize important points. These pauses give the audience time to absorb the information and signal that what's being said is worth paying attention to. By slowing down their speech and creating space between sentences, speakers convey authority and allow their message to resonate more deeply with listeners. But the subconscious mind doesn't just pick up on how we speak, it also guides how we respond to others' voices. Our brains are constantly scanning vocal cues for information about the speaker's emotional state, intentions, and level of engagement. These cues help us navigate social interactions, whether it's in a business meeting, a romantic relationship, or a casual conversation with friends. Consider a scenario where you're having a disagreement with a colleague. As the conversation heats up, you notice that their voice becomes sharper and faster. Even before they explicitly express anger or frustration, your subconscious mind is already picking up on these vocal changes, triggering a similar emotional response in you. This is a prime example of how our emotions mirror those of the people we interact with, often based on subtle vocal cues. This mirroring of emotions through voice is also what makes certain speakers so compelling. Think of an inspirational leader, public figure, or even a motivational speaker. These individuals are often able to captivate an audience not just with their words, but with the emotional energy they convey through their voice. Whether it's the passion in their tone, the power in their pitch, or the deliberate pacing of their speech, they are able to evoke an emotional response in their listeners that goes far beyond the literal meaning of their words. But what happens when there's a disconnect between someone's words and their vocal cues? This is where authenticity comes into play. When the tone, pitch, or rhythm of someone's voice doesn't match what they're saying, it creates a sense of cognitive dissonance in the listener. We might not consciously recognize it, but our subconscious mind senses that something is off. For example, if someone is expressing excitement about a new opportunity, but their voice sounds flat and monotone, we're likely to doubt their sincerity. Similarly, if someone is trying to reassure us with the words "everything is fine," but their voice is shaky and uncertain, we'll pick up on their underlying anxiety. This is why it's so important to align our vocal cues with our words, especially in situations where trust and credibility are on the line. In professional settings, mastering the subconscious elements of your voice can have a profound impact on how you're perceived by colleagues, clients, and superiors. By consciously adjusting your tone, pitch, and pacing, you can communicate confidence, authority, and empathy, qualities that are essential for leadership and effective communication. In personal relationships, understanding the power of your voice can help you build deeper connections. Whether it's offering comfort to a loved one or resolving conflict with a partner, the way you use your voice can either strengthen the bond or create distance. By paying attention to the emotional cues in your voice and the voices of others, you can navigate these interactions more effectively. So how can we use this knowledge to improve our communication? Here are a few practical tips. 1. Be mindful of your tone. Before entering an important conversation, take a moment to check in with your emotional state. If you're feeling tense or anxious, your voice may reflect that. Practice taking deep breaths and relaxing your body to ensure your tone is calm and controlled. 2. Adjust your pitch to match the situation. In professional settings, a lower pitch can convey authority, while a higher pitch can make you seem more approachable in casual or social interactions. Experiment with adjusting your pitch based on the context to see how it affects the way others respond to you. 3. Use pauses strategically. Whether you're giving a presentation or having a one-on-one conversation, don't be afraid to slow down and pause between important points. Pauses give your listener time to absorb the information and signal that what you're saying is worth considering. 4. Pay attention to others' vocal cues. In addition to monitoring your own voice, be mindful of the vocal cues of the people you're interacting with. Are they speaking quickly or slowly? Is their tone warm or tense? By picking up on these subconscious signals, you can adjust your approach to better meet their emotional needs. 5. Align your words with your voice. To build trust and authenticity, Make sure your vocal cues match the message you're trying to convey. If you're excited, let that excitement show in your voice. If you're offering reassurance, use a calm, steady tone to reinforce your words. If you're intrigued by the idea that your subconscious mind is influencing your everyday decisions, Subliminal is a must-read. Mlodinow breaks down the science behind how our minds operate, using captivating stories and research to show just how much of our behavior is driven by forces we can't see. Grab your copy of Subliminal today and start gaining a deeper understanding of yourself and the world around you. Want to dig even further? Let me know your thoughts in the comments or share how this book has changed your perspective on decision-making.